So to start making a tour, we're going to create a new Unity project. We're going to select 3D and give it a name and a location, and then after about 20 seconds you'll get your Unity up. Now the first thing I want to do here is I want to change our name from sample scene. I'm just going to call it tour. It may ask you if you want to reload, just click yes. Then I'm going to delete my directional light, and that's because I no longer need this. This light is not going to be needed at all in our project, as we're going to use 360 images that have all the lighting in them already. So the next thing is I don't really like looking at this horizon, so on my main camera I'm going to change the background color to a grey, and I'm going to, instead of picking Skybox solid color, you can skip that step if you want, not necessary, but I just don't really like looking at it because I know I'm not going to use it. You're not going to see this grey color either. So the next thing I want you to get to do is head up to your assets. I want you to import the custom package that's in the link below. This custom package just has a few sprites that you can use as icons, one audio file for some testing on audio, and a model is really important. So if you only want the model, then just take that and you can deselect the other stuff. This sphere is what you're going to show your 3D60 photos on. Okay, now that that's in your scene, you'll see that you have a few things here that you can do things with. The first thing here is the sphere, is the most important part of it, and just drag it up here. I'm going to change the name of this by clicking up here and calling it Site 1, and I'm going to play around with the size a little bit. So you can set the position here to 0, 0, 0, so it's right in the middle of the world, and then we'll zoom it up a bit. Let's maybe try 10, 10, 10 to your scale. Next, let's go to our camera, and our camera is currently off center, so I'm going to change that to 0 and 0, and we're now inside that sphere. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is a 360 photo. I just picked one randomly off a site. It doesn't really matter where you get it from. I'll show you the site where I got mine. And I just picked 2 or 3 of these. To get these into your project, just open Explorer or Finder and drag them across. I'm going to create a new folder for them, and I'm just going to call it Images 360. And it's good to keep all of your things organized in folders. And now I have my 4 different 360 photos that I've picked as sites here. Now click on Assets and let's create another folder. We're going to call this Materials. To apply one of those images to a 3D object, you need what's called a material. So I'm then going to go click on my Materials folder. I'm going to go up here to the plus to create a new material. Then this material, I'm going to call it Creek, because that's going to be, just call it Creek 360, just so we remember it's a 360 image that we have here. Now I'm going to go to my images, and what you want to do while you have the Creek 360 selected is drag this across and drag it into the albedo. Now I'm not going to use the standard shader, I'm going to pick a different one. I'm going to pick Unlit. And I'm going to pick Texture because you have the image to put on the texture. This means that there'll be no lighting on it. Then you can click on your Creek 360, and now you can see we have our 360 image and our camera here in the center. So that's as simple as it is to get your 360 image in. Next up, we're going to create a script to make it so that you can look around that 360 image. So let's create an empty object. Make sure it's 0, 0, 0 for all the position and the rotation. And let's drag the camera on top of this. And let's call this the world center. So this is going to be the thing that we rotate. The reason that we're not going to rotate the camera directly is we're actually going to move the camera backwards and forwards to achieve a zoom. So next down here, you're going to want to click on assets and create a folder. We're going to call this scripts. And this is where we'll create all the scripts that we need for this project. Don't be scared, we're not going to need very many of them, probably 3 or 4, and that's all you'll need to make this. Let's call the first script camera controller. And then you just double click on this and it will load it up in whichever editor you have selected. I use Visual Studio. So this is where you write all of your C# scripts. Yours may have a white background. All you need to do is change your preferences if you want to see a background that's like mine. I really like the dark backgrounds and I'm somebody who always picks the dark themes. So in our class we're going to need here. So this is Visual Studio and it's where you'll be doing all of your scripting. So to start off with, you'll see it already gives you a couple of things by default. This update function runs continuously over and over while your application or Unity is running, and this start runs just the first time you start your application. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable for the sensitivity of the mouse. I'm going to call this rotate speed, and I'm going to make it equal to 300, 0, and F for float. So whenever you have a decimal point, you want to put your F at the end to make it a floating number. Now, with this rotate speed, all that's going to mean is as you move the mouse around, it's going to be how quickly the mouse moves. I found 300 is a good speed for me. If you try your project and don't like it, you can just go in here and change the number to anything you're comfortable with. So next, down here in our update, we're going to go if input dot get mouse button, and I'm going to look for mouse button 0. So 0 is your left, 1 is your middle mouse button, and 2 is your right mouse button. So what we're going to do is we're only going to rotate around the scene when we push down our left mouse button. And then you use these curly braces, or curly brackets, they're actually called braces, and in between here is where you put your code you want to do. So here we're going to rotate according to the mouse. So any of these things that appear in green are actually not part of the code, and it's just English to remind you what's happening. Now this line may look a little scary, but it's not really that scary. So we're going to get access to transform. That's the XYZ value of the object that we're about to move. And we're going to look for the local Euler angles. And we're going to make that equal to a new vector 3. And all that means is we're going to give it a new X rotation, Y rotation, and Z rotation. So we want to get the initial value because we want to get our initial value and add something to it. Then we want to get how much the mouse has moved. And this mouse Y, the way that it's spelled out is very important that you do it this way. And that includes it's case sensitive, so if you've got a uppercase or a lowercase here, you may, and it says can't find my mouse Y, it probably means that you spelled it incorrectly. And then we're going to times it by time dot delta time, because that's how much time has elapsed since the last frame. This means that it'll make the mouse movement the same on any computer no matter how fast or how slow it is. And finally, we're going to times that by the rotate speed. So that's our X value taken care of. Next up, we're going to go with our Y value. And we can essentially copy this whole little chunk here so you don't have to type it all out again. Paste it. You want to change this to X and this to Y. And you may wonder why I've got mouse Y in the X value and mouse X in the Y value. That's because they're inverted, and you'll find that if you have them the opposite way, the rotation won't work the way that you're hoping for it to work. So finally, we've got to give it a Z value, and our Z is always going to be 0. There are a few little issues with this way of doing it, but it's a good way to get you up and going. And you need to make sure that you save this, and then you can go back to Unity and test it. So if you've got a red error message down here, that means you've typed something incorrectly in your script and you're going to want to go back and have another look at it. So first up here, we're going to get our camera controller script and we're going to drag it onto the world center. And you can now see it here. So let's hit the play button. And if you go into your scene now, you can drag your mouse left or right, up or down, to get a good view around this, but you can't zoom in at the moment. So let's go back to our scripting and add in the code we need to zoom. Now to zoom, we're going to do this by translating or moving the camera forward in one axis. And the axis we're going to move it along is the Z axis. So let's make some variables to help us do this. We're going to need two variables to do this. We're going to again need a speed for it, and I find that I want my zoom to be a bit faster than my rotate. And I found this is again a nice value. Again, if you feel like you don't like the speed that it's going at, you can change this to the speed that you like. Then we're also going to need another variable. This is going to be the zoom amount, and we're going to set that to 0 to start with. Then down here, I'm going to make the zoom work with the right mouse button or the middle mouse button. I'm going to go input.get mouse button. I'm going to use 1, which I mentioned was the middle mouse button, and this is called a pipe. And it's on my keyboard, it's just above the enter key, and it's these two vertical lines, and that stands for OR. This means that we're going to run this code if you push the middle mouse button or if you push the right mouse button. And we're going to move the camera. So to do this, we're going to need a zoom amount, which is our variable up here, and we're going to make this equal to, and I'm going to use a little function called mathf.clamp. You're going to want to make sure your clamp has the capital. See? And in here, we're going to need to give it some variables. So the first thing we're going to give it is our zoom amount, because that's the variable that we're going to change. Okay, so we're going to put our zoom amount in, and we're going to add to it the input.getAxis. And I find I want to use the mouse Y for this. It just feels natural to me and the way that other applications do it. I'm going to multiply it by time.delta time, so it's the same on any computer that you use. And I'm going to times it by the zoom speed. And I'm going to say that the maximum value is 5.0 F, and the maximum value is 5.0 F. And actually for testing I might make our zoom speed just a little slower. So now that this will add or subtract the amount, a certain amount each frame that your mouse has moved up or down if you've pushed the middle or right mouse button. Then we need to apply this to the camera. So we'll go camera, .main, .transform, .local position, and it's going to equal a U vector 3, and 0 for X, 0 for Y, and our zoom amount for the Z axis, and that's all you need to get your zoom in and zoom out working. So I actually did the thing that I mentioned before and I didn't quite spell my mouse correctly. So make sure you have your capital Y there, and again remember to save your script. And now let's head back to Unity and see it work. So push play to make your application run. I can go left and right, and now if I grab my right mouse button and move up and down, I can zoom in and out. So this is going to sort of conclude this portion of it. We've now made a very simple 360 viewer. In the next part of the tutorial, we'll make a menu that allows you to go through and look at several of these sites.